always ready for battle, even if his heart's not in it. Here's your look at the Boss Fight Studio Epic Hacks Gladiator, Destroyer of Empires. While it's unknown where the gladiators first appeared, one of their kind was captured by the ancient Romans and forced into combat with one of the most famous warriors. After decimating its enemy, the skeleton vanished and a group of them reappeared sometime later, adorned in oversized gladiator armor tailored for their impressive bulk. Confronting the emperor who had forced them into combat, they slew him and hundreds of his men, laying waste to the city and cleaving a massive chunk from the Colosseum. And while this guy's getting all articulated for the arena, I'd like to throw out a big thank you to the folks over at Boss Fight Studio that, with like the cases before of looking at the Pirate and the Grim Spectre, also kindly provided the sample of the Gladiator that we could have a look at in this review. FYI though, if you'd like to get your hands on any of the Epic Hacks skeleton warriors we've looked at so far, they are available as of right now on various online sites for around $29.99. And I really honestly think that that's a great price considering you're getting a very detailed, super articulated 6-inch skeleton with tons of accessories. Although you may not see the accessories yet, you will though in a second. Let's go ahead and grab also the tape measure and see how tall this figure stands. Now, I've already mentioned that the guy is going to be 6 inches in height. And in fact, he is 6 inches tall, or the figure is going to be about 15.5 centimeters in height. Bringing now in the other figures we've already had a look at, here's what the Gladiator looks like with the Pirate, and here's also what it looks like with the Grim Spectre. One, though, does stand out, obviously, because the Grim Spectre I couldn't pass. The head sculpt of that jack-o'-lantern was just way too cool not to have the figure displayed with it. So it is going to be a little bit different. Body-wise build, it's going to be exactly the same as they're using one mold to the other. And with the skeleton face, it's slightly different also as well with the Pirate. This one had the patch and the bandana, although the more generic skeleton head was also included with that figure as well. As for those accessories, Gladiator comes included with the same Epic Hacks display stand cast nicely in a very vibrant red. Various pegs can already be spotted. You can see there's actually 4 of them, in fact, that can plug into the undersides of the skeleton's feet. It's a nice looking display stand, and consistently I've been displaying all my Epic Hack figures so far. I guess 2 done so far. Now with the 3rd with this one, they're all being displayed right now with the display stands. I just like the display stands, and I like that companies like Boss Fight Studios still continue to include stands with all their figure releases, whether they be the tall or the small. Moving that to the side, the figure also comes included with a shield. Boy, one thing that you will see consistently with all the accessories that come packed along with Gladiator is the attention to detail that they add to all of these. Not only are they quite intricately sculpted, but very well painted as well. You can see first of all, some nice use of gold. Inner bands as well have been more added, kind of more of a lighter copper color, and they have even taken the time to sculpt the underside of it, looking as if it's actually started in wood. So like they probably made a wood shield, and then they would have probably put like a metal plate over top of it. The thing I thought was smart about the shield is there's a handle, obviously, that the skeleton hand is going to hold on to. But then the other part is usually a part that is actually fully joined. So a lot of times with other figures, you usually have to slide it onto the forearm and then try to get the grip around the shield. Not this time around. In fact, actually, all you have to do is clip the hand around this handle. And then this simply just, you can open it up and fit the arm down in there. Let me show you what I mean by that. I actually find it's easy, first of all, to remove this skeleton from his hand, or remove it from the forearm. He's not going to feel it anyways. And while the skeleton's there without his hand, simply just take the hand provided. And I find it's, again, easier just to do this first, and then you can just attach it onto the forearm later. Because, like, the hands being what they are, the material that they've used is sort of more of a denser plastic. It's sometimes, honestly, hard to get the hand in there while the hand is still attached to the forearm. So we're going to go ahead for right now and just going to attach the hand onto the shield. There we go, as best we can get it. And then from there, all you're going to have to do, now still you could feed this in this way and then just attach the hand onto the other peg. But with at least the slots provided, you don't have to fight the form to actually slide in there. You just simply open up the back of it. And I think that's smart the way they did that. Other accessories that come included with the figure as well. Let's get in the stand here. You get yourself a broadsword. The sword itself does have some really nice detailing done to it as well. You kind of sort of start with more of a silver paint, but then on the guard and the hilt, you got more of a darker, richer gold that's been added there as well. This can, though, fit into either one of his hands. The Gladiator doesn't come included with any other hand than what you're seeing right now, but there is also storage space. If you spin around the back of the skeleton, there is actually a little slot on the back where you can hilt the sword, slide that in place, and it actually fits quite well onto the back of the figure's body. It's also a good thing, too, because he still also has 2 other accessories, and he still simply only has 2 pairs of hands. He only has 1 pair of hands to do it. The figure also has a slightly curved sword. The sword actually does have a little more damage done to this. You can actually see, like, there's parts to the metal that have been chipped right out, as he's probably been using the sword quite a lot. Still, though, the handle and the guard is about the same as before. Then maybe you'll see there's a little bit of detailing actually on the guard itself, but it's a really interesting looking sword. I actually started the review with the figure displayed with this, and I might continue just to do that when it comes to displaying this guy on the shelf. Again, you can also fit this into his hand as well. The only thing, though, about the skeleton is there's real no meat on his body to kind of keep everything in place. But you can go ahead and take the sword and just attach it into his hand. And again, that's the way I had the figure displayed at the beginning of this review. I just want to turn the blade around. The last thing that the figure also comes included with is a scissor or sizer blade. It's a really neat looking, very destructive, I would imagine, a force blunt object. Now, to fit this on his existing hand, it's really difficult to do. I find actually it's easier just to remove the hand altogether. Go ahead and just remove it from the peg while we're doing this. There we go. There we go. And then just from there, slide this then in place. Now, there is actually, if you look at the inside of it, the reasoning also why I removed the hand is if you look at the inside of it, there's a hole in the bottom of it where you take then the peg now from the freed hand, and then you just plug that into place. And you've got that as a way of displaying the figure as well. Really cool looking touch. Haven't really seen a lot of figures that come included with something that's blunt and destructive as this. I'm really glad to see that Boss Fight Studio included it. So let's go ahead for right now. I'm going to remove the shield because I know that's something I will want to get out of the way for, of course, the purpose of posability. And maybe for also what we'll do is remove the sword for right now as well. Let's also, simply because I don't want to lose the hand, we're going to pop that also off as well. And let's just pop the hand back into place. The pegs, though, just being a little bit small, you will want to be careful to make sure that the hands are completely attached before you move forward with whatever else you're going to be doing with the figure. The last thing that he also comes included with, matching, of course, the colors of all the other things we've looked at already, is a really interesting, let me just get my hands around it, a really interesting Gladiator helmet. I really like the look of this. I also like the way it sort of has oxidization on there. A little bit of greenish tint shows us that there's a little bit of rusting and oxidizing that's happened to the metal. Some nice gold there also on the front. You got some gold there, branding on the front of the helmet as well. And you can also see as well the way that the skeleton would be able to see through the eye holes there. The only thing that's unfortunate when it comes to actually attaching the helmet is that instead of what I thought would have been the case, let's just get the figure here. I thought this would have been a case where the front of the helmet would have detached, making things then a lot easier to fit this over top of the head. The plastic that they've used, fair enough for the helmet, is a fairly soft plastic. But still, the thing I don't like about it is it's such a good-looking head sculpt for the skeleton that in order to get this over top of the head, you really have to fit it over top and rub it against the plastic. Once it gets over essentially the larger forehead, it fits fine. In fact, it actually sits a little on the more looser side. The only thing, though, I don't care about is when you try to remove it, you have to pull it past the head. And I think right here, if you're not too careful, if they took the time to paint the skeleton head, which I think they did, I think there might be a risk that that may start to scrape the paint or even scrape the plastic. So it may not be something it looks like he's wearing a hat. It may not be something you may want to do a lot of. Let's just, for right now, take the helmet and just put it back on for 1 second, show you guys what it looks like first of all. Looks really good, doesn't it? But for the sake of this, let's go ahead and just remove this for right now, and we'll put everything else to the side. Getting a closer look, though, at the skeleton. The skeleton itself, I just dropped one of the hands. Let's go ahead and pick that up right now before I lose it. The skeleton head, let's go ahead and just get the hand back in place first of all. Don't want to lose this, that's for sure. There we go. Okay. Skeleton head as it is basically the same head that we did get before with both the Grim Spectre and the Pirate. Of course, the Pirate did have 2 variations of this head. That one that had the bandana, one that also had the eye patch. This one doesn't have it, but it does have at least an inherited ability to hinge the jaw open and close. That's something that the eye patch version of the Pirate wasn't able to do, but the Grim Spectre was more than easy able to do. One thing I really like also about the coloring of this guy is the fact he's sort of a darker gray. It sort of gives him more of the lifeless look, which is kind of funny to say that for a skeleton. But by the comparison of, say, oh, let's just even bring in the pirate, for example. The pirate being more of a glowing green, and even then the Grim Spectre we can also bring in, minus, of course, the fact he does have the pumpkin head, did have more of, again, a brighter blue. This one actually is more of a traditional-looking skeleton, kind of what you would expect a skeleton be to color-wise. I really like the sculpting, first of all, for the head. There's a few little cracks you can kind of even see on the side of the temple. And it really does carry over nicely from, head all the way down to his toes. But then over top of it, he's also got, again, the gladiator armor. One thing you may already have noticed, the fact that the bandolier that he has, complete with a very elaborate-looking shoulder pad, sits, though, very, very loose on the figure. There's nothing really attaches this in place. You can kind of stretch this across the shoulder, for example, and once that's there, it sort of does prevent at least the bandolier from moving around for you. So, for example, if you're having a tough time where this just moves around way too frequently, you, again, can kind of rest it underneath the bone area here. And it seems to be more than enough. Not that I really need to tip that upside down, but at least it would prevent the bandolier from moving around as much as it is. Down below, of course, you've also got yourself sort of a rag lower loincloth, colored very nicely in a crimson blood red. You've also got some additional detailing added here with the belt. I like the gold use that they've also added here to the side. And speaking of very elaborate sculpts, get a load of the leg guards here that he has. Lions, of course, greeting you at the front gates. And then down below there, you've got some additional scrolls. All this, again, nice oxidization that they've added. I got a little bit of blue at the top there, but I would imagine that that's probably deliberate. But it's a really interesting looking sculpting for the leg. I can't imagine how easy it would be for this thing to really move around and how heavy these may actually be. But I think it's just such a great feature to add for a figure like the Gladiator. It doesn't necessarily limit the articulation either. Where they put the hinge joint is actually just right located at the back. So it's very easy still to move the knees despite the fact he's got so much armor on the front of it. Speaking though of articulation, I just dropped the hand again. Speaking of articulation though, the head is on a ball joint, so it does rotate back and forth. It looks up, it looks down. Does have again the hingeable jaw, so you can open and close that as well. So I really like the look of that. Hinging in the shoulders is always present usually on these figures. You can get 90 degrees easily with the Epic Hack figures. You can bring the arms forward, you can bring the arms back. A single hinge only, again, on the forearm, but at least it allows the forearm to rotate back and forth. Hands do rotate all the way around. Again, you're just going to have to be a little bit careful. I've got one hand that's down there. I'm going to have to go pick that up in a second. The figure does have an upper torso ball joint, which is good to see. The figure also seems to have a swivel in his waist down below there as well. Legs still managed, despite the bulk that he has, able to hinge out. They seem to be using ball joints in this case. You can bring the legs forward, you can bring the legs back. There's still a single hinge in the knee, but allows at least I think there's a rotation in the lower leg there also as well. And of course, there's articulation in the ankle back and forth. As already mentioned, the figure does have pegals on the undersides of his feet, so yeah, make use of the display stand, certainly if you'd like to. But again, a nice looking skeleton. Really liking this line so far. And if maybe you were a little turned off the idea that maybe with the skeletons so far from the Epic Hacks, they've been brightly colored, not the most realistic approach to skeletons. One thing at least about the Gladiators, not only does he have some really cool looking armor to be displayed with him, but he's also more traditionally the coloring of a skeleton that you'd expect to see. Not as much blue, not as much green, but more again like bone white. It's a really, again, nice looking figure. I love the accessories that he comes included with. The hardest thing really is the fact that the figure has to give up one thing in order to be displayed with all the accessories. He has at least the means to store the broadsword on the back of his body. He can, of course, hold the shield in the one hand. He can hold then another weapon in the other hand. That then leaves one thing left behind that can't be displayed with the figure. But in the meantime, though, such a great looking figure and a continued love that I seem to be developing when it comes to the Epic Hack stuff. Some really cool stuff coming from the folks over at Boss Fight Studio. Scratch one point I did make in this review where I did talk about that there's one thing that the skeleton has to leave behind because he just doesn't have the means to store everything. If you look at the back of the figure's body, now I've got that scissor blade on the one side, I've got the curved blade then on the other, because of course the broadsword fits the best holstered on the back of the bandolier. But because now also the shield does have that little slit in it, normally it would just be a complete loop with many companies releasing shields all like that. But because they put the slit in the back of it, you can in fact open up that slit and fit it around the broadsword as well. So really, for all intents and purposes, short of the one hand, which by the way I did actually retrieve, in case you were worried, everything technically can be stored on the Gladiator. I think that's awesome. Means certainly nothing gets left behind, short of, again, just one hand, but I'm going to put the hand with the rest of the accessories that we've looked at so far for the H.A.C.K.S. They're all sort of in a baggie right now, and I've marked H.A.C.K.S across it, so I know where all the accessories are if I ever need to go back to it. But at least for the Gladiator, I don't have to really go back to anything other than just that one extra hand. Overall, it's a really nice looking figure. Sculpted well, again, maintaining still that skeletal frame underneath it, but then adding all this additional Gladiator armor that not only looks good from a sculpt standpoint, but is immaculately painted too. Like all the oxidization that they added to the metal, for example, it does kind of in a way look like metal, even though it's obviously been cast in plastic. I think that Boss Fight Studio has done a really great job when it comes to the Gladiator. And again, if you're looking for something a little bit more realistic versus the Pirate and the Grim Spectre that we've already had a look at, I think like the Gladiator is like one of the best that they've done so far. If you guys are interested to get the Gladiator or the Pirate or the Grim Spectre, or you'd like to get your hands on all three of them so far that we've obviously had a look at, there's one still left to go. But if you guys are loving this line as much as I'm loving this line so far, they are available as of right now through various online sites for $29.99, which again, I think is a great price considering you're getting a super articulated figure with all the accessories that he comes packed along with. Big thank you once again to the folks over at Boss Fight Studio that did provide the sample of the H.A.C.K.S Gladiator that we had the chance to have a look at in this review. Speaking of reviews, if you guys enjoyed watching this one and you'd like to throw it a like, why not? If you guys are enjoying the content though and you'd like to stick around for more, if you haven't already done so, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and you're also turning on the bell notification. We are also, by the way, going to be looking at one more of the H.A.C.K.S. That's the Barbarian. And again, if this is the kind of line you like to come back to this channel for, just make sure and just know, be in the know that the Barbarian review will be right around the corner. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.